Shalom, my friends. I was asked to elaborate as to what happens to the neshama, to the soul, after it leaves this world. By way of introduction, I'd like to tell you a very famous story that I've heard many times from my cousin Shlomo. The story takes place in the Middle Ages in the ghetto of Cracow. The Jews in the Middle Ages in Eastern Europe lived under very trying circumstances. They were barred from owning any land. They were barred from going to university, from entering the professions, or doing anything that would have been in competition to the Gentiles, to the goyim around them. As a result, very little opportunity did they have. They could become money lenders or things like that. And as a result, most of them were extremely poor. Add to that they were stuffed into ghettos. And at that time, if disease broke out, as you can imagine from the virus we're living through now, it would spread like wildfire. The conditions were terrible. And yet somehow, in many of the ghettos, you had a few entrepreneurs who became very wealthy people, and they knew their social responsibility, and they always tried to help one another. The story that I'm about to tell takes place in the city of Cracow. There was a yidel there by the name of Yossele. He had one failing. He was a terrible miser, and nobody likes a miser. And you know why? So my cousin Shlomo says that on Rosh Hashanah, we wish one another you should have a good year and a sweet year. He asks, why do we have two expressions, L'shana tova umetuka? And he replies that in his travels, he's met many people who are very good, but not so sweet. And sometimes he meets people who are very sweet, but not so good. So on Rosh Hashanah, we wish that the good people will become sweet and the sweet people will become good. So most people have at least one of the two qualities. But a miser has neither. He's not good and he's not sweet. As a result, nobody likes him. When he walked down the street, children would throw stones at him. The adults would whisper behind his back. But it never seemed to bother him. He got on with his life. You know, when he went to shul, everyone went to shul in those days, he would sit in the back corner. He was never greeted by anyone, never given an aliyah. And so his life went by. But even misers have their day. They have to leave the world. And in those days, the Chevra Kadisha used to come around your deathbed, take your vidui, do vidui with you, take your confession, and prepare you for your final journey to the next world. And so the Chevra Kadisha there, and they say, Yossele, listen, you've never been seen giving 1 cent to the poor. So we have the following proposal to you. Although we normally charge 5,000 rubles for a funeral, you were going to charge 50,000. And the extra money we'll give to the poor. Do something good with it. Yossele is dying, but he's not senile. He knows a bad offer when he hears it. So he says, so much money. Bis Hopfen zinnen. You'll get the customary 5, not a cent more. I can't give you more. What do you mean you can't give us more? They were so upset with him. What does that mean? But what could they do? He's dying. So they shouldn't have done what they were about to do. And they certainly didn't consult with any of the rabbis. But they said, Yossele, if you don't give us the money, we take a vow now we're not going to bury you. Yossele didn't get to his station in life by giving in to threats. He was well beyond that. So he shrugs his shoulders as if to say, so you won't. But the money kannst du vergessen. You could forget about it. And suddenly Yossele gets a terrible pain. He yells, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu. And with the words Hashem Echad, his soul leaves his body. The Chevra Kadisha were disgusted. They were so upset with him. They looked around and they decided to carry out their threat. They weren't going to bury him. They just walked out of the house. This was on Sunday afternoon. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday passed by. A neighbor had pity on Yossele's wife and children. I mean, Yossele's just lying there. Nothing. So, towards the middle of the night, the neighbor comes, picks up Yossele's body. He takes him to the cemetery, and he does the tahara. He does the purification process that you're supposed to with every deceased. He digs a lonely grave and lays him to rest. The next night, the rabbi, very famous Kabbalist, is sitting and learning. His name is Rabbi Alex Carlebach. We have his books till this very day. And he's sitting and learning, and there's a knock on his door. Bell the baker walks in. And Bell says, Rebbe, please help. I have no money for my family for Shabbos. I don't know how I'm going to make it without the help. And in those days, every community used to raise funds, would give it out to people, and the rabbi was the trustee, similar as you have here to Yad Aron or the Chevra Kadisha. So the rabbi says, how much do you need? He says, 5 rubles. He says, okay, I'll put you on the list. Come tomorrow, I'm sure I'll have the money. But tell me, did you just stop working? Did you just become poor? You've never been here before for help. He says, Rebbe, to be honest, I burnt my hand 3 years ago. I haven't worked since. The rabbi says, so how did you live till now? He says, ich weiß nicht. I don't know. All I could tell you is that every Thursday night, there was an envelope with the 5 rubles under my door. This is the first Thursday night, there's nothing. 5 minutes later, Shimon the shoemaker walks in. He says, Rebbe, I need 7 rubles to live. How did you live till now? I don't know. All I know is every Thursday night, there was an envelope under my door. Within hours, hundreds of families. Nobody knew that they were in need, were coming with a similar request. This one needed 10 rubles, 13 rubles. It didn't take long for the rabbi to work out who had been putting those envelopes under the door. This Yossele the miser, who everybody had despised, made fun at, and threw stones at, he was secretly supporting half the town. And not only didn't they treat him properly in his lifetime, they didn't even give him the basic decency of a funeral. The next morning, the rabbi woke up. He summoned the whole Cracow together. And he said, Eden, my brothers and sisters, we have sinned terribly. We had a hidden tzaddik in our midst, this Yossele who was supporting the entire city. And not only didn't we treat him properly in his lifetime, we didn't even give him the basic human decency of a funeral. Wehgeschrien. We have to fix this. Sunday, I'd like every man, woman, and child in the whole Cracow to gather at the big shul. We're going to fast and we're going to pray to Yossele's soul to forgive us. But tell me, how did he know who each of you are? How did he know what you need? And it turns out that when a guy like Beryl became unfit for work, he turned to his wife and says, Chanala, we're not going to make it unless we get help. Who could afford to help us? The only person I could think of is Yossele. And so they'd make their way to his mansion. Yossele would invite him in. What's your name? Bill the baker. How many children you have? 14 Kanainhara. Where do you live? And he'd take all the information, and then he'd say, to what do I owe this visit? And he'd say, well, if you could give me 5 rubles a week, I could make it. And suddenly Yossele would become like a Jekyll and a Hyde. He says, are you Miss Sugar? You're asking me for my hard-earned money? You think money grows on trees? You think I get it easily? Where do you think I would be if I had to give everybody who asks me money? I'd be in the same position you are. You're still young. You want money? Get your own. Go and work for it. You're not getting 1 cent from me. And being a strong person, Yossele would pick the guy up, throw him out of the house. He'd say, never come here again. Go and say, Yossele is as crazy as they say he is. But within a few weeks, after it would become obvious, an envelope would start coming under the door. Now, there's 2 things you do not do when you're getting such an envelope. The one thing you don't do is run to shul the next day and say, hey, I'm getting an envelope. Are you? Second thing you don't do is hire some PI, some private investigator, to find out where it's coming from. You're just so thankful that it's there that you have one prayer on your lips, and that is that it'll be there again next week. And so nobody really spoke about it. Maybe there were suspicions, but nothing that got out. Can you imagine what everybody felt like on Sunday? Coming into that shul, praying, asking for forgiveness, crying. The very person who had given them life, who had helped them for all these years. And this is the way they treat him. The prayers were to high heaven. Towards late afternoon, the rabbi didn't feel they had gotten through. And so he had them open the Holy Ark. He put his head amongst the Torahs. And he says, Yossele, I'm begging you, in the name of Cracow, please give us some type of sign that you forgive us and that you're not angry with us. He suddenly felt extremely tired, totally exhausted without any strength. He sat down in his chair. He fell asleep. He had the most amazing dream, because there he saw Yossele, but shining like he's never seen before. And Yossele says, Rebbe, tell the townspeople I'm not angry with them. They have nothing to ask me forgiveness for. This was my choice. You see, when I decided to help people, I was thinking, in what way can I do it? And I had 2 choices. Either I do it in a way that everybody knows and they all doff their top hat and say, there's Yossele supporting the whole town, or they do it in a way that nobody knows. I do it in such a way that only my Creator, myself, knows, and nobody else does. And so their reaction would be to throw stones. But let me ask you, Rabbi, what other reaction should they have? If they know I am so wealthy and have so much extra money and I'm just too selfish to share it with them, what other reaction? Wouldn't I react the same? Rabbi, I want to tell you something. They never disappointed me. Do you know why? Do you know the only time you have disappointments is when you have expectations? I had no other expectations. So they have nothing to ask me forgiveness for. So the rabbi says, Yossele, but didn't you have a lonely burial, being buried all alone at night? He says, no. The souls of my ancestors, the shepherds of our people, their soul came to greet my soul to its rightful place in heaven. I guess the rabbi felt, how often do you get such an interview, right? So the rabbi says, Yossele, what's it like in heaven? This is why I'm telling you this story and my first part of to what's it like for the soul when it leaves the physical entity. And to understand the answer that Yossele gives, I'd like to ask you all, my friends who are watching this video, how would you describe colors to a blind person who's never seen color in his life? Tell me, how would you describe the different shades of green that there are on leaves or in grass to a person who has never experienced colors because he was born blind? The answer would be, of course you can explain it, but not in words that he can ever understand it. And not because the blind person is stupid. He might be cleverer than you. It's just beyond his range. God created us with 5 physical senses. That's what we need to cope in the physical world. There are more senses that exist. He had the insight into with these 5 senses, we cope in the physical world. But you need the sight, the sense of sight to understand color. Without it, it means nothing. It's just words. And not because the blind person is stupid. He might be cleverer than we are. Not only that, the blind person might say no such beauty exists. Whose shortcoming would it be? It would be the blind person, not us. Similarly, there are more senses that exist. Talk about a 6th sense, 7th sense. They help us to understand the spiritual worlds. However, we don't have it while we're in a body. That is a sense only the soul can see. So, while we are, this is what Yossele answered the rabbi. Rebbe, as long as you are in a body, you will never understand the spiritual worlds. It's as difficult to explain as trying to explain a blind person colors. Much as I'd love to share it with you, I could only tell you that the spiritual world exists, and it's more blissful than anything you can imagine. The only thing is, there are no broken down doors in heaven. And what I miss more than anything else is my walk on Thursday night from one broken down door to the other. When the rabbi awoke, he told the townspeople the story, and he asked them to make a tombstone for Yossele. And on the stone, he wrote, Ponitma Hires, Yossele Kamtsan HaKadosh, Yossele the Holy Miser. And that stone was a place that many people went to daven and to pray to Hashem for help. And if anybody wants to see a picture of that stone, just go on to Google and write Tombstone of Yossele the Miser. So my friends, the first answer as to what happens to the soul when it leaves the physical world is still to be given in another shir. But I'd like to assure you that this soul continues to exist. And as the Rebbe says, the connection that it has with us, with family, with loved ones, is an eternal one. It goes beyond time, space, or even death. While you may not be able to see or comprehend the soul continues to see you. And if you ever encounter difficulties in life, know that your soul of your loved one in heaven is praying on your behalf. Not only does it continue to exist, but the connection it created continues. and it continues to be concerned for the ones that lived in heaven. And just as a blind person cannot comprehend color, in the same way we can't comprehend the spiritual worlds, but it is certainly there. Shalom, and thank you for watching.